I walked into that interview room wearing borrowed shoes, my nerves tucked under a thin layer of forced confidence, and my resume printed on crisp white paper that felt heavier than it was, because every word on it held years of quiet struggle, overlooked promotions, and jobs taken out of necessity, not choice. And yet, I showed up ready, prepared, hopeful that merit might still have meaning in rooms like this. But the moment Leonard Hayes, internal candidate, team favorite, Ivy League, schooled and smirking like a man who'd already picked out office drapes, laid eyes on me, he decided I wasn't competition but comedy, and it showed. From the instant I introduced myself, he mocked my non-linear career path, questioned why I'd taken a 2-year gap, never mind it was to care for a dying parent, and chuckled when I mentioned learning to code through free online resources, even going so far as to say, "So, you're self-taught? That's adorable." Like grit was a punchline and not a currency I'd been surviving on for years. But I said nothing, just smiled, answered every question with calm precision, because I knew something he didn't. This wasn't a regular interview, it was a test, and the CEO, a quiet woman named Ellen Rhodes who'd built the company from a garage startup to a global player, had personally asked HR to throw a wild card into the mix. Someone without the polish, but with undeniable results, and I was that. Wild card, someone she'd quietly followed on industry forums for a year, someone whose ghost-written case studies had quietly shaped whole campaigns, and she wanted to see how I'd hold up under pressure, especially the kind that people like Leonard specialized in. So I sat there absorbing his jabs like body armor. Then when the technical challenge was laid out, I dismantled it in 20 minutes flat, presenting a solution that the panel, his friends, couldn't stop whispering about. And while Leonard stumbled through jargon and recycled buzzwords, I backed my approach with logic, user data, and real-world testing from the consulting gigs I'd done under the radar. I saw their faces shift, their eyebrows rise, and Leonard, suddenly sweating, tried to poke holes in my reasoning, but every jab only made my case stronger, and by the time we stood up to leave, the room was different. He felt it. I saw it in the forced handshake he gave me, the panic hiding behind his eyes. The offer came too. Days later, not just any offer, his offer, the one he thought was in the bag, and when I walked in on my first day and saw his empty desk, he'd resigned out of disappointment in the process. I was told. I couldn't help but wonder how many other resumes he'd laughed at on his way up, and how many of them, like me, had been better than he ever allowed himself to believe. Now, months later, I sit in that same seat he once claimed, leading the projects he once fumbled, and mentoring interns who remind me of who I used to be, because I know the feeling of being belittled, of being told you're not enough, and I also know what it feels like to prove them all wrong. And if Leonard's out there still scoffing at unqualified candidates, I hope he knows that the underdog he mocked now signs off on 6-figure proposals and gets invited to boardroom strategy meetings while his LinkedIn activity reeks of desperation, because in the end it wasn't about being better on paper, it was about being better, period. And that's something no resume or ridicule could ever hide.